looking at the specific time zone request. So it will be good to interact with Australian colleagues, mostly the agency partners around. Many of you guys might know each other, who knows, but would be good to keep that engaging. And for any sort of support, guys, you can send us an email. Our host, like panelist, Risha, who's going to be the moderator for the webinar, she can address all the questions, right? So you can reach out to her on risha.b@mavlers.com. Perfect. And let's get going. So obviously today's webinar is going to be all about unlocking smart outsourcing for digital agencies in today's uncertain time. The whole objective is to address the key concerns, what we've been hearing from agencies. So that's what we're going to address. And I'm sure it's going to be truthful content for all the Australian agencies to know what other agency partners are experiencing around the world. So very quick introduction for myself. I'm Nita Shah, look after, as a COO, look after entire operations for Mavlers. We are a digital marketing agency serving global agencies and brands around the world. We help marketers for everything to do with their marketing operations needs and bring their strategies to life. I personally have been working experience in Australia, where I was there for good 10 years. Similar to you guys, been on agency side world, worked with a lot of Australian brands for good 10 years before I moved back to India and started my own agency. And we have my friend and a colleague, Moby Siddique, CEO from Red Panda. He's a head strategist, and the way he would like to get feel prefer to introduce himself as he's chock full of tactics, no fluff around that. So maybe over to you.
Natalia, you're too kind. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd love to share some of the things, our journey, a lot of the stuff that we have found that works in this market, and hopefully some actionable ideas, like you say, for everyone.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be very practical on the ground. So I'm sure it's going to be very insightful. Yeah, perfect. So let's get the ball rolling. So guys, just a little bit of background and context. We all know that post-COVID, the situation was amazing. Like we all have grown rapidly throughout that digital penetration. Especially we talk about later part of 2020, 2021 has been very amazing for us. And I'm sure from my interaction with all other agencies around the world was very similar. I think last year and a half has been very difficult and with a lot of uncertainty. We have war, we have inflation, many other factors around where things has become difficult with the current global economic situation. So I was fortunate enough to go around, meet a lot of our clients face to face in Australia, in UK, in US, and few other part of the world, as well as I have interacted with our clients over Zoom across the globe, because we're fortunate enough to have clients from 52 different countries around the world, and that gives us a leeway to interact and learn from these different markets. And all my interaction, very interestingly, have been very similar. The challenges agency owners goes through is also very identical. Solutions are different the way how they navigate it through, but there are some commonalities there as well. So the whole purpose for us to come together to consolidate all those learning and share that with you all, so that we all as an agency partners can navigate from this scenario. So the biggest question I have been hearing from most agency owners I interacted with is this one, the one big burning question, that how to navigate in the current uncertain times. That's how it is. Like things are so uncertain, everyone is just stuck at this point. Maybe 2 cents from you. What are your feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing about uncertainty is indecision becomes rife. So, like deals are sitting on the table longer. They're taking longer to convert. And if we think about it, we're kind of like that too. Like even I'm thinking about some of the decisions we're making from a purchasing point of view, whether it's software or other partners, is like we're taking a little bit longer. So I think the key thing here, like navigating uncertain times, is for us as agency owners, is actually how we navigate indecision. Because when it's indecision, it's not that you're losing your competitors, your customers or prospects to other agencies. You're losing it to indecision, the idea in the prospect's mind that they don't want to stuff up, They don't want to make a decision. They don't want to avoid that risk.
Yep. True, true, true. True. No, very true. Let's deep dive into it. Let's cover what specific areas we have been hearing people more concerned around. Yep. So the first one is inflation, right? I'm sure we all can very much relate to this. My interactions in Australia from agencies are also very similar, right? The cost of living, the rent, interest rate, everything across the inflation is so high it makes things very, very difficult. So that's what we've been hearing from a lot of agencies across when we interacted. And very interestingly, if we see the stats, right, on my next slide, like if you see the across the globe, see the inflation, like compared to what we have been seeing around 2%, 3% versus what we are at in Australia, we are at 5.3%, which is kind of almost double. So we can imagine how difficult it has become. And if we look at hover over across the map, I think it's similar. Like India is close to 5%, but India has been always holding that sort of inflation. But if you look at the other country, like US, 4.5, very high. Europe, again, very high. So yeah, it's definitely the one common burning challenge we hear from agencies, that it's kind of killing their bottom line because their costs have gone so up. The other aspects we hear from the market is clients are so cost sensitive and they kind of always need more for less. And I'm sure, as maybe mentioned, we can relate ourselves when we go and purchase today, right, from any vendor, any other partner. We have the similar trade. We behave in the same manner. So we can't expect our clients to have different behavior pattern. So many of the clients we experiencing the same. Agencies when I interacted across, they go through the same struggle, that how can we fulfill all demands coming from the client for the limited set of budget they're investing. um, the next one is the longer decision cycle. I literally remember my interaction with one of agency colleague in New York over lunch. Right, they mentioned the usual decision making cycle. They are in relatively mid-sized market. Used to be around 2 to 3 months, but now that has gone over like 10 to 12 months. So a lot of projects they kind of got soft approval, but they don't have a final sign off, either due to budget, either due to uncertainty today going around, many other aspects, right? I'm sure we have experienced the same in Australia, right? We just finished our financial year end. Many of my interaction with Australian agency was the same. Due to end of financial year, usually we have influx of approvals because everyone wants to exhaust their budget before they end the financial year. But very unlikely this year, a lot of approvals was pushed back from last few months, stating this year we don't have any budget. We have all this limited budget we have exhausted. So you have an approval, but hold on, guys. Can we get started in July when I have a budget release? Maybe. Have you been experiencing the same in Australia? Because my interactions are leading me to the similar experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. Thank you to Francis and Giovanna and everyone in the chat right now. Francis mentioned that with this inflation, marketing and other digital services are the first one that gets cut. So yes, people are taking longer and also cut. And you know what's really interesting about this is when you look at the buyer's journey, by the time anyone speaks to sales, 80% of the buyer's journey is done. Like Forbes has done this,
Yeah,
Google has done this research. 80% of the decision has already been made. You know, when our customers or our customers before they speak to sales. Yet, as Francis mentioned, when there's a downturn, who's the first department that's cut marketing, right? Like that's how they actually
yeah, yeah.
pay us back.
Marketing.
But that's the wrong way to
Yeah,
look at it. And very, very briefly, I don't want to take too much time here, but when they've done research on this, and I encourage us to find, it's our job to know this research. And I did an article on this, but you can find this guy stuff online. When you look at times of economic downturn, the brands that maintain or increase market share or spend in marketing actually out of it, because this is a cycle. We're going to come out of it. When the cycle comes out, they bounce back almost twice as hard. This is not Moby Siddique saying this. This is research,
absolutely.
academic research they've done on this. When there's a downturn, if you maintain spend or increase it, when you come out of the cycle, you're far better off. And I think that's a key thing that people forget.
No, very true, very true. And most economic downturn has that spring effect, right? Like you correctly mentioned, maybe things bounce back after a slowdown. And marketing, we all know, like you need to have that consistently going so that when there is market bounce back, you are utmost visible, you are there to capture and capitalize that wave of demand, right? And so most marketers miss out on that, most businesses missed out on that. So very well covered. Like it's important to keep it going so that when market bounce back, we are there, the brand is there, things are visible. Yep, perfect. Moving on. Yeah, so this one is kind of another big one, right? Like with inflation, hiring people internally or any sort of cost, fixed cost is a big concern because being on an agency side in the past, I know very well that kind of the biggest cost as an agency we hold is our salaries and other fixed costs associated around that. In a service vertical, we don't have any other largely associated cost. And because this component is usually larger chunk of our bottom line, whenever the inflations are high, right, this gets the most hit. So yeah, agency wants very limited fixed cost and overheads. And that's why people are avoiding to hire people because everyone remember like when we were in the post-COVID wave with influx demand of digital services, we all have hired like crazy. We all have grown amazingly. But then when the downturn came, when the global economics tough situation came, the first one or the first things to get hit is our fixed cost. Many of us have gone through the phase of, I'm sure, laying off few of our team members, which is kind of very tough always to face. But that's where we are at. So most agencies I interacted with now they are very conscious around their fixed cost, especially when they want to make any hiring decisions. They're very conscious. Moving on, yeah, and very interesting study from PwC, and if we look at it, it's also very recent. That very interesting trend in the talent space where the study was around how likely you are to change your employer within the next 12 months. And very surprisingly, that trend is going up. So I'm sure the challenge of retaining a talent is going to be consistent even in these markets. So again, when the talent churn is there, the hiring a new talent, setting up new teams, setting up them for success is going to be an again very effort driven cycle. And that all adds to your fixed overheads because you have invested into someone, you end up losing that talent or team member, you hire someone else. So that cycle is a huge investment from time and money, both perspective. So that's another burning area we have been hearing from agencies. So just to recap, guys, right? So inflation affecting the agency profit margins, clients wanting more for less, the longer decision-making cycles doesn't give predictability to us as an agency owners to plan things and plan our commitments from other side of hiring people or investing into tools, softwares, things like that. Uncertainty around project renewals. We don't know when we're going to get renewal. Are we going to be retaining that customer? They're going to have budget to continue or not. Hiring and retaining talent, as we covered. And definitely, we need to control our fixed overhead cost. That's another big concern slash focus area for agencies. Maybe what are your thoughts overall? Are you hearing the similar stuff around?
Yeah, and I think everyone I can see in the chat as well, everyone's feeling, I don't think anything, like so good to see the stats around it, but I think it confirms what we already know. And I just want to touch a little bit on like,
Yeah.
the indecision side as well, so like we said, people are taking longer to make decisions. A lot of this stuff is perception based, right? So there's a probably like the first big tip that I want to give everyone is there's a book called The Jolt Effect you can see on screen right now. And this came out very recently, and it came out during a very unique time in our history, which is during COVID. What happened was like a lot of us have been doing online sales, right? But during COVID, so many businesses started doing sales online and Zoom and whatever. So we had this moment in time that we've never had before where the guys behind this book, they had, I think, access to 3.5 million calls and they've done data and analysis. And this whole thing is about indecision, how you can, overcome indecision. And when times are tough or uncertain, this is when indecision is rife, right? So For example, Giovanna, so good to see, and please apologies if I've butchered your name there. She said, yeah, and I find hiring has such a big impact too. Clients don't have the budget to hire. It's the budget, but a lot of that is that uncertainty. We don't know whether we want to make these commitments. So one of the things that the big takeaway from this book is how can you actually take a risk off of the table? Right? Not what a lot of poor sales reps do is using FOMO. FOMO can work, or limited time offers and those things, bonuses, they can work. But in uncertainty, what the book shares is FOMO tactics actually make indecision worse. Right? So when these guys looked at all the factors, speak about things like taking risk off the table. So what does that look like in our space? No or low guarantees or opt-out clauses. After COVID, what we started doing, and we've kept this up, we stopped offering 12-month contracts. No more 12-month contracts. We're going to take risk completely off the table. 3-month contracts, even for some clients, 30-day contracts. And I didn't know this at the time, but when you do that, when you have no or low or guarantee or opt-out clauses, your win rates increase by 109%. So there's a very real impact. The other thing that I think, and I think this works whether you're in agency land and marketing, or I think there's some recruitment agencies here as well, is having detailed project plans. So what's one? Take risk off the table, have guarantees or low friction agreements. Two is having detailed project plans that actually show the client like, hey, this is the map, this is the destination, and this is what we're actually going to do to get there, and visualize that. And I think I'm going to share something a little bit later. And the other one is starting smaller. So it's very related to the first thing, but how can you have smaller commitments or a smaller sort of like, hey, look, this might work, this may not work for you. I completely understand. Let's actually start smaller and then see how that works. So yeah, for me, these are some of the key things that we have to work on in decision as agency owners or people in the agency space.
Yeah, very true, very true. Francis mentioning in the chat that many of clients are moving from project instead of the traditional retainer which they hold. Yeah, similar. We also have kind of launch and introduce short pay, right? For any agencies who are either possibly relatively new to outsource or hesitant to try Mavler services, right? We have a short pay guarantee. With what it means, after the project is done, right? If you're unsatisfied or if you're not satisfied with the outcome, as an paying party, as a client, customer, you decide what do you want to pay. Do you want to pay nothing? You want to pay 20% of the project, 50% of the project, whatever amount you decide. You have the utmost control based on your satisfaction level. And that's, like you correctly mentioned, maybe, that brings that convenience and ease for people to enter in and try new things, especially in this time where they're hesitant to, from the budget constraint and overall crunch, every one of us goes through.
Can I say on that? I can't promise if you guys listening whether you'll have the same experience as me, but my coach and mentor Nital gave me that advice to do short pay as well 2 years ago. In 2 years, no one has ever hit me up for short pay, ever. So again, I can't guarantee that'll happen with you guys.
True. It's usually our subconscious initial hesitation, but most customers are in real business, right? Or rather, all customers are in real business, so they don't want to kind of take and disadvantage of such offers, right? So we are always hesitant to roll out such bold offers, but in the real ground, customers are in real business, so they just do the right thing. And if you are doing the right thing to deliver right, I think we don't need to worry about introducing such offers. Absolutely right, maybe. Yep, perfect. So agency across the globe, let's cover quickly how are they leveraging offshoring. And guys, this is not just coming from the Mavler's lens. My interactions with agencies has been also very holistic about their journey, right? And some of these learnings I'm going to share are also not limited to my interactions in last quarter. It's also spread it across because we work with 200 plus agencies at any given time, right? And over the journey of last 12 years, we would have worked with more than 400 agencies over last 12 years in different times, different scenarios. So some of these learnings are coming holistically from agencies' journeys of leveraging offshoring. Perfect. So before we get started, some quick stats, right? I'm sure most agencies in digital world would recognize SEMrush. So very interesting study done by them in terms of how many agencies are kind of open or are currently outsourcing, how many are not outsourcing, and how many are kind of mix of both, where they rely a lot of things to be executed internally, as well as they outsource time to time. in typical sort of an hybrid setup. So very interestingly and surprisingly to see that more than 50% of agencies are leveraging outsourcing in one form or other, for obvious reasons. Some of them which we covered, we're going to cover and talk about it later on this session as well. But very interesting stats, guys, before we move on. Right. Okay. Sorry. You guys see my screen still okay? Sorry, I kind of just, something happened on my screen. Yep, we are good?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Okay. So how the offshoring has evolved over time. So guys, in our journey, we have observed, and as Moby mentioned, a lot of agencies still today start small when they're new to offshoring, or when they've been introduced recently to offshoring, or even their current partner is new. They may have done offshoring before, but their current partner, whom they are trialing for any particular service, it's the new engagement. So usually it starts from very tactical task, right? It's easy to get started outsourcing a task which has the least impact. We have a large revenue of our business comes from email template build, which is like $100, $200 task. Very easy entry points, and majority of our customers enter from there. Very low risk, low commitment service to test any supplier. That's how usually most outsourcing journey starts. From there, once they gain confidence, they reach to a point of outsourcing a project, kind of a large build or an ongoing SEO campaign or performance media or marketing automation journey builds and things like that. From there, once they gain confidence in that journey, they reach to a point of hiring someone dedicated who's going to work full time as dedicated to your agency. Post that, once that journey evolve or get mature, you reach to a point of building your entire offshore team, where you can kind of treat that team as an extended part of your team. And that's the journey we have observed many agencies goes through in their journey as they mature with their outsourcing experience. Because trust me, guys, any journey dealing with a partner offshore, if you have done it in the past or not, but when you start working with any partner, they're going to be teething issues to start with, to get to know each other, get to know each other's way of working practices and strength and weaknesses. So this is the usual offshoring approach we have seen any agencies owners have been taking. Moving on, again, very interesting one, right? As I mentioned, as things evolve, try leveraging, agencies are leveraging their offshore partners as a true partners, where a lot of time they introduce them as part of their team, and it's a fully white label solution. So what happens? Agencies leverage offshore partner, treat them as part of their team, represents them with their domain, email, access, everything, and they deal with their end clients directly. Everything is under NDA, full confidentiality, non-poaching agreements and all. And this works amazingly well. Very recently, maybe, I would love to hear from you. We have been seeing some very interesting trend, especially in Australia. Earlier, our journey, I don't want to talk too much about Mavlis, but I can't stop myself from this. Agencies been only leveraging us on specific project services, and some agencies build those dedicated team. But very interesting trend we have seen in last 1 quarter, a lot of agencies hire only project coordinators from us, and they represent them as part of their team under white labeled setup, where these project coordinators become part of their sales cycle, pre-sale cycle, preparing proposals, preparing pitch decks, right? Communicating with their clients. So a lot of the coordination and communication aspects, they also rely on outsourced partners in a white label solution setup, so that it's not disclosed to their end clients that they're leveraging offshore team, but they get an extended support for a lot of pre-sales work. Yeah. Are you seeing or experiencing something similar? Maybe a juggle with pre-sales, with a lot of proposals?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you get busy doing the work, and then you get busy like trying to get the work. So like those things can actually, conflict with each other. So, one thing that's been useful for us is like as we've expanded, we've been able to have strategy people in Australia. So we've got a head of paid media, we've got a head of SEO here as well. But they have a team in India to do a lot of things they don't have time to do. And I remember during COVID actually, and we've continued this. We first started this in COVID with you guys, and we've continued this. It's like, hey guys, look, we've got all these like not a lot, but we're so busy and time poor right now and resource constrained that we don't have time to do audits. Like, can you guys help us out? Um, because it's mutually
Yeah.
beneficial. If we get the client, you guys can support us on that. So I've definitely, felt that. So moving from doing tactical things to trying to get an agency to be a little bit more strategic with you and actually starts feeling like a partnership is really like the nirvana that you want with an outsourcing partner. They can actually help you get more business, audit work for you. They're not going to go make the calls for you, but if you've got those leads, they can do a lot of the auditing and research for you. It makes your job so much easier and your ability to win deals so much better.
Yeah, true, true, true. Thanks for sharing that, maybe. So moving on, the other way I've been learning from the market how agencies leverage, especially now with omni-channel approach. A lot of your digital campaign and strategies are so well connected across different channels and different campaigns. Um, Very important to kind of leverage offshoring to ensure that you are able to offer a holistic omni-channel approach to your clients. Not necessarily as an agency you hold utmost expertise and capabilities to support your clients across all channels. But giving that holistic solution, omni-channel approach for your clients is very important and integral part in today's world. So a lot of agencies, we've been hearing and learning from them that they leverage offshore when they have to plug in some specific services and support from other agencies, which those they don't hold capabilities for. This is my favorite one. Easy ramp up, ramp down, right? As I think Francis mentioned, right? Like a lot of clients move from retainer to project based. We all see that fluctuation in our client demand in these days. And it's more around this time of the situation where the global situation around over last year and a half. But my experience as an agency working for 10 years in Australia has been also very similar. We as an agency always struggle to have fixed retainer from client, and we always have seasonal fluctuations in our revenue stream. And how do we ensure we manage our profitability as an agency owner, especially when our top line is going to be fluctuating? And that's where outsourcing can be leveraged to fit in really well, and you leverage your partners only when you have influx of demands or fluctuations of demand. The other thing is, as I mentioned, we all have gone through a tough cycle of hiring people and reaching to those unpleasant decisions of letting go some of our team members. We all hate that situation, want to stay away from that. Offshoring can be a great weapon to leverage very smartly when you have that situation, when you're unsure if these demands going to stay for long enough or not. In this uncertain time, you get a really large clients on board, and you're not sure is client going to be there in a retainer after 6 months or not. Instead of building your internal muscles and hiring people and reach to a point again, either you have to compromise on your bottom line, or you have to kind of end up letting those people go when the project is no more with you, right? I think offshoring can be leveraged really well. Easy ramp up, ramp down whenever you need those temp needs, I would use. Yep. Okay. Now, we all talk about what's the situation today with agencies, what are the sentiments, why there is a need for outsourcing, how outsourcing has been leveraged, but very importantly, to address, I'm sure, a big elephant in the room. We all would have kind of our own learning and experience in our journey of making some amazing success and wins, leveraging outsourcing, if you guys have tried in the past, and our struggle and hustle of having those stressful time when the outsourcing doesn't work in our favor. So very important to address that. So we thought let's address it head on. That why and when outsourcing fails. And I'm sure on this we're gonna piggyback a lot of learnings from Moby as well. Excuse me, because Moby has an amazing journey leveraging outsourcing and outsourcing partners over 10 years. So looking forward to get some very practical ground reality from the other side, right? Like we can share our learning and my learning interacting with agencies. But while Moby is here, we'll definitely cover that. So very quickly, I'll try to speed up, guys. So why outsourcing fails or when outsourcing fails? So when you don't have a clear brief, this is the most common things. A lot of time, what happens? Agencies delegate the task with only giving a context of that task or project and not providing that holistic background information and the why behind it, right? As Simon Sinek says, that everything is around that why. So very important to give and set up that context of why you are outsourcing that project and how it's going to impact you as an agency and your end client in their marketing digital journey. So very important to cover that and give enough attention to that, especially when you're outsourcing. Um, Try and aim to have someone dedicated on the side of an agency to from an outsourcing partner standpoint. So you need to make sure you have someone dedicated at your outsourcing partner's end who's dedicated to take your brief rather than you briefing someone on in your outsourced partner business and then they brief someone else and the job gets done by someone else. If it goes through multiple chains, it becomes Chinese whisper at times, as we all know the challenges with that. So very important to ensure with your outsourcing partner to have a dedicated POC who's going to stay with you in the entire journey, at least for that entire project journey or project lifecycle. Very important to give clarity on goals, like I mentioned, right? That setting up that context and why, and very clearly defining success matrices, not having grayness around what we're going to call it as a success. If we define what we're going to call it as success with clear goal, clear KPI, clear timeline on by when you're going to expect this to be delivered, and clear budget, I think these are very critical. Otherwise, because people are sitting at distance in a different country, things gets a little haywire if these critical aspects, which are the success for the project, is not well defined or well communicated. And always make sure, guys, always co-own, right, the strategy. Your outsourcing partner can bring a great level of expertise, but they're not going to have utmost context of your client's business. As an agency owner, what we have heard from agencies, that agencies are more closely working with businesses and they know those businesses well, better than anyone else. So if we co-own the strategy piece with an outsourced partner, that's what we have seen working really well in outsourcing world. Maybe over to you. Would love to take a few inputs from you.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. I have done this for a really long time, not only at our agency when I started, I've also worked at a lot of, we're in the Australian market, a lot of agencies. I worked at Rocket for many years and I was just below the owners there and we tried a lot of different things. And, so one of those key things is like a lot of these tips that you're sharing, Intel, they can apply to anyone, like whether you're hiring someone directly or through a partner. But I think the key thing is like a quick story that I'll quickly share was I worked at Rocket Agency, formerly the Web Showroom, and they let a lot of people go in their Philippines team. And that was around the time I was starting my own agency. So I was like, hey, look, I'll hire them. Like I'll hire them, I'll help them out, I'll pay them more. And like after you hear the excuse of like, hey, my laptop's gone down or there's been a typhoon 10 times by the same person, you're like, man, like this is like BS, you know what I mean? So the partner thing is really, really important. And I was very hesitant. Like I hired directly, I hired through Fiverr. This is early on in the day. And I really regretted doing that because with a partner, you're going to pay a little bit more. Of course you are. But you have that support around them. And the other thing too, like when people resign, I wish we had this with our onshore in-house people, that when they resigned, there was a knowledge transfer for the next person. But you don't have that luxury. But
Yeah.
with a good partner, no matter what partner you select, and we certainly have this with Mavlers, is they do the knowledge transfer for you. So what does that mean? So they're working with you. There's a database of background. There is instructions that you've been sharing, all the stuff, all the learnings that outsourced or a person has had with you. And then by the time that they leave, there's already an overlap. So I really like the idea, and you should question your partners if you do work with a partner or consider working with a partner. That guys, when someone leaves, like, do you have an overlap? And one of the things that you guys actually don't communicate or use as a selling point, and maybe you should, is for a moment you're actually you're kind of losing money a little bit, right? And you tell because you have multiple people on the account.
Yep.
For an
Definitely.
overlap, you're paying for the person we're paying for, but then you're paying for someone else who actually like is working side by side
Yep.
with that person for 3 or 4 weeks. And that's what you pay for. Because as agency owners, we don't have time to retrain everyone every time someone leaves. I think that's really, really important.
Yep.
And the final thing I'll mention as well, it's like I think this is a big benefit of having a partner who can work in your time zone. The good thing about India does have a culture more than a lot of other countries where they work on multiple time zones. So like our people, our resources, they always work in the Australian time zone, which is, helpful and beneficial to us. That's for sure.
Yep. No, very true, very true. Okay, moving on. So yeah, this is another one, right? Like when you intend to outsource very hyper local business, which are very specific to your country or to the community specific business, right? It's not like any other retail business or any other very commonly traded business. So I'll take an example, right? Especially because I have a legacy working in an agency side and in Australia for spending good 10, 12 years, it hasn't been much barrier or hesitation for me to train my team. But similar scenarios when we have from US, we see it requires a little bit of support and cushion from the partner. So for example, let's take an Australian example. If you want to outsource a campaign for a client who's into SMSF, self-managed super fund, now, and partner sitting in India or Philippines, not going to know what's that about, how does that work, and that contextual relevancy around that. So if you have very, very specific hyper local stuff, right, it's important to make the partner aware enough. If it's not been very well articulated or not very well communicated, right, it becomes a challenge. And then we sit towards the end not having your experience successful. Very similar to one of the other campaign which we do for one of the footy team from Newcastle, right? And we run entire campaign for their promotion, marketing, and everything. And our team needs to know that enough, right, before they serve and support clients on their holistic strategy approach. So I think that's where something needs to be also be staying conscious around that, especially when you're outsourcing hyper local businesses, to invest enough in briefing the team and transferring that knowledge. Moving on, what to outsource and what not to outsource. Moby, would love to hear from you because I think rather than me talking about it, would love to hear from your journey.
Yeah, so we've got on the screen right now on the SEO side. So obviously, like from the digital marketing agency side, this is something that it doesn't make sense to have all of that in-house in Australia with Australian wages. And you mentioned earlier the ramping up and ramping down. The ability to have that with a partner is really, really important as well. So all of our strategies in-house, we talk about if anyone, I'm sure because we have agency owners here, we talk about content clusters and creating content strategies and how that links. All of that happens in-house. But then there's like all the other stuff that we don't have the time to do. We don't want to be creating these plans and doing the execution. And I don't want to be paying someone, like $100,000 or $80,000 salary even to be creating backlinks for us. So this is a really good example of where we actually, it doesn't really do it justice, where our resource at Mavelers created an SEO project plan for us. So we worked in tandem with them. Like, this is our strategy. This is what we're going to focus on. This is the content. We want to mush that together with a technical SEO project plan as well. And we didn't have to do, all we did was we got our resource to do it. We made a few changes. We made a few tweaks, like let's move some things around because we want to do other things in a particular month. And then the account manager who works for me, she presented it to the client. So yeah, they created it and then we actually essentially presented it and then we owned the strategy layer and all the content.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I think it's that piece, right? Like that's what we call it as kind of that, like that handshake, right? It has to be done well properly. Perfect. And I think this is also the type of report you want to share some
your
inputs here.
This is a really good example of something that's very labor intensive, that as agency owners, it's not a really good use of our time to create. So this is a report in Looker Studio. It used to be called Google Data Studio. And as what me and my head of paid media, so my head of paid media is in Australia, but before that, when we were smaller, like my head of paid media was in India. I still have Indians working in that department. So whether I'm doing it with my Indian team members or my head of paid media here, it doesn't matter. The point is we looked at our report and we're like, okay, what does the report need to have? Because good reporting is data to insights to recommendations. Three-part: data, insights, recommendations. So for us to create the data, that's really time consuming. And also the insights. So what our team is able to do is we sort of architect, this is what we want. We want the report to answer these questions. And that's always the best way to approach reporting, by the way, is what are the questions you want answers to? What should the data tell you? So we architected that. And then our team, this is very time consuming to do every single month because some of these are automated. Some of them you have to get manual data and input it and stuff, but we're obviously trying to move as much to automation. So the data and the insight steps, that's done for us. That's done for us. And all we have to do, and
Yeah.
obviously, to be honest, like the team also shares some recommendations, but the bulk of my team's time and their thinking is spent on the recommendations part, not the data and insights part. So yeah, so this I think for digital, if we're talking about digital marketing agencies on the SEO and SEM side, this is really, really important. Historically, Facebook ads and the strategy behind that offshore team, doesn't matter what country they've struggled with, but we're also finding ways to make that a little bit easier. Like we do the strategy in-house, and the key thing with Facebook ads specifically is having templates or frameworks, getting them to do it, getting them to use AI and ChatGPT, and then tweaking. But on the Google side, for sure, like that is such a strong thing that you should be or could be doing with offshore agencies and specifically a partner.
No, true, true, true. Perfect. Thanks for sharing that, maybe. Okay, let's quickly cover. I know we are kind of shooting over time, but another like 5, 7 minutes. Very quickly cover. Where to offshore, right? I think that's another big questions we hear from agencies in my interactions, and especially when they come on board with us. Even we ask, and that's where there's always a confusion. So there are different options, guys. Like depending on which geographical locations you are from. A lot of agency partners from US we hear they prefer to outsource to Philippines or Eastern Europe or India. A lot of partners from Europe, we hear from them that they prefer to outsource to Eastern Europe or India. A lot of partners we hear from Australia, New Zealand, that India, Philippines are the most common destinations. The obvious reasons are the time zone alignments, right? But let me address, obviously, couple of cents from my side on how India is positioned. Honestly, very proud about it. So I would love to share that. So India, there are a few reasons, right? We have the youngest country. We are the youngest country, right? 60% of our populations are below 35, right? 1 in 3 are digitally savvy, talent, young population we have, right? Very stable politics, good growth rate, right? Overall economic situations is so much favorable. So I'm sure there are different pros and cons, and every country has its own benefits. But in India, we what we have been seeing, not just as Mavlers, India as a whole, right? Because a lot of businesses, a lot of partners from India helps you support over 24/7. So it doesn't matter if they are supporting US clients, they work in their time shifts to ensure they deliver and work collaboratively with them. Or if they're working with Australian partners, they make sure they start quite early in the day to ensure they give the right support. So India sits at a very sweet spot on a global landscape with stable political background. Last 10 years of growth journey of India, things has changed a lot with young population, right political background, and amazing global growth rate. So that's the sweet spot we are on, and I'm sure every one of you would have different experience dealing with different countries. Moby, do you have any experience dealing with, of course, with Mavlers, but beyond that, and would love to share that hear from you.
Look, just to keep it short, absolutely. Like I think India's a great market. I think the reliability there has been really, really good for us. We actually still do have some full timers working for us in the Philippines as well, and I love our team there. I will say there that, and obviously I'm speaking to agency owners, I'm being very direct here. I will say that I did a quick search in my Slack. I was sharing this with you, Nital, and I put in keywords. I put in internet outage, computer, and Philippines, and like I could see from like the last 2 years, like the amount of times and again, like right, I have some really reliable people in the Philippines, but the amount of times there's been outages in Philippines, like you need to make sure you actually have a well-resourced team there because, and that's not their fault, right? That's obviously not their fault. Not holding that against them, but
Yeah, it's just the global the yeah. Go on. Sorry.
yeah, it's like it has caused some issues. You know what I mean? Like for us in the past, but we still have them and we use them for VAs and we have multiple ones there. But then again, like so for example, RG's mentioned in the comments, I have not been lucky dealing with India. India's in multiple times in projects, now enjoying with Philippines. There's going to be things where, different markets, different partners is going to be better for your situation. But I think the key thing is if you can get them to work in your time zone, which a good partner can help you with, you have that knowledge base, you have that support network system, any country can work. But that's just been my experience.
Yeah, no, very true, very true. So I think it's a lot of aesthetics around that, right? We covered about what's gonna take to make it successful, right? So it's if that map is there, obviously the geographical aspects comes at a later stage. But what we have seen and experienced that a lot of clients leveraging, like you correctly mentioned, especially comes from Australia and New Zealand. And my experience in Australia when I was there for 10 years on an agency side is similar, especially for VA sort of a support, kind of an administrative virtual assistant. Philippines works really well with strengths they hold. When it comes to like deep technical work or kind of digital work or marketing automations, web development, performance media, SEO, what I have experienced in the past and what I hear mostly from partners like you. Um, at times, if they happen to find a partner in India, the success are relatively better just because of the type of trade of jobs what you outsource or rely from your partners to do. Yep, perfect. Let's move on to Q&A. But before we address the questions from the audience, which would love to address, and I know we are kind of little over time, but very quickly, maybe would love to know about this. I think it's a very insightful thing, and I'm sure audience gonna be helpful to know a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so I don't know if anyone,
If
I
you
mean,
can help us.
most people would not know our story, but we were acquired by a US company 2 years ago. So I've got a lot of mentoring and coaching from them. And I was thinking about like what's one big piece of advice I could give to my fellow agency owners. I would say that, and this comes from a framework called EOS. And there's another framework that you guys use, Nita Scaling Up, which we used to use as well. We just shifted to EOS because our parent company did. But it's been so powerful for us to have a framework of growth and scaling to follow, whether it's scaling up or EOS. And one of the tips that I wanted to share, and we learned this from EOS, is he always talks about giving people a visual. Like when people hire us, they want a destination, right? They want a destination or a goal. So it behoves us to share something that's almost like the map to that destination. How can we actually get from where we are? What does success look like? And how do we take it to growth and mastery? So I'll keep it short, but essentially that's essentially it. The biggest thing that because imagine being able to share this visually with your clients. Like, hey, Mr. Client or Miss Client, this is the journey. This is the path we'll take you on. It's really impactful. It's really powerful, and also helps them share it back to their internal stakeholders or buying group. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. But I think for us, that's definitely been a game changer following some sort of framework. And this is just one example of the power of a framework like EOS or scaling up.
Yeah, true, true, true. No, thanks maybe for sharing. And yeah, that scaling up journey has been amazing. And it's just following any structure, right? Any structure which you can resonate to your business and which feels like gonna be a good fit for your business at the stage you are at the type of complexity or the challenges you have been facing. Any such structured approach helps. And that's my experience as well, as you correctly mentioned in the scaling up journey. We were at that stage of kind of growing from 500 to 1,000, right? And at that scale, putting that structure in place and following that framework has been very helpful for us. So any of such structured approach, I think I encourage all our agency partners to take, for depending on their needs and depending on which part of the journey they are.
100%.
Perfect. Let's address the questions from the audience, guys. Okay. I think the last comment from RG, yeah, which maybe as you correctly addressed, I think finding RG finding the right partner and doing your checks while selecting your partner is going to be more crucial than the destination or location. I'm sure everyone has different experience, and appreciate you sharing very candid insight and honest feedback of what you have experienced with India. But yeah, I would suggest focusing on selecting the partners with your right checks and balances gonna be more decisive factor on success of your outsourcing journey than the destination.
I will say it does also depend on your budget. Like if you can only afford to hire someone direct, obviously that's your option. But I think any partner that you have, and this is to you specifically, RG, is the fact that you have a partner, you can actually go to them. Like the team I'm working with in India is great, but we've been on this journey for years. There's been situations where there were people that weren't so great. So, I've actually had like it's always almost like a throat. I hate this term, but it's in our industry, one throat to choke. I've been able to go to my partner, my outsourcing partner, and to their manager and say, hey, look, I've got issues with this person. They're not performing. And a lot of the times we've been able to change their behavior or work on something. But the key thing is it hasn't been my problem. I'm too busy. I don't have the time to train them and make them better. I can rely on my partner to do that. In one or two cases, like we had to replace the person, but there was a knowledge transfer. But most of the times when there was an issue, my partner or the person at Mavlers who they reported to was able to help me and guide me and work through that. So I think that's really, really key to have that support. And if you can have that, it's honestly a game changer.
Yep. Perfect. So we have received one question from Himanshu, that top 5 challenges you're facing manage your projects. I think this possibly maybe coming from you might be more beneficial to the audience. So do you want to take this up?
Yeah, so I was replying to RG there. So what question are we looking at?
That's okay. Top 5 challenges you're facing to manage your project.
Maybe I don't have time to give 5 right now. I'm sure I could give 20. But I think especially if we talk about it in the context of having stakeholders in different, and we work almost exclusively online. I only get my team to come in the office 3 times every fortnight. I think one of the big things is like getting accountability and ownership on tasks and deadlines. That's probably like the biggest one, and I'll talk to that one, the biggest one. So I think the key thing there is we implement a software called Teamwork. People use Monday.com. It doesn't matter what you use. Actually, it actually does not matter what you use. For a long time, we used to use Smartsheet back in the day. But the key thing is getting people to respect it and use it. So we make sure that everyone who starts at Red Pandas and our offshore team, everyone goes through the same onboarding. They know how to use the system. They have to log 65% of their hours of a day. So not every single minute of the day, but 65% of the hours for the day they have to log. And we make sure they have the training and support, and we have checks and balances to ensure that that's being logged. Not for the point of being logged, but for the point of, or Big Brother, for profitability and to ensure that things don't fall through the cracks or slip through the cracks. So that's probably the biggest one I'll talk about for sure.
Thanks, Moby. Thanks for addressing that. So the next one from Himanshu is best parameters to check the partner before hiring. So yeah, I'll take that up. So Himanshu, like usually, depending on what are your reasons to go and think of outsourcing. I think first we need to introspect our reasons why we are looking out for a partner. Is it an expertise, or is it the kind of support over influx of the fluctuations of need we have, right? So very important to keep that at center. What's your why to rely on the partner? Your checks may change a bit based on that, but for me to answer it generally, you look out for the expertise or the capabilities they hold, because you're not only usually relying on partner for the jobs to be done. You are there to expect some sort of insight, intel, for them to bring their expertise on table. So you evaluate them based on the type of expertise or the knowledge they hold. You usually gauge from since how many years they have been into business, their journey. So is it like something they've started new versus someone who's kind of an established partner who has a good legacy journey experience and exposure dealing with global brands and clients. The third is the support aspects around that, like the time zone alignment, the communication challenges, because in offshore setup, the usual challenging part is that communication. So very important for you to get checks done on how they're going to communicate, what going to be their support system like, what are the usual SLAs and response time to your queries, because you don't want to be in a situation sitting offshore in a different country in a different time zone when there is a criticality. You don't have the right timely support from your partner. And the last, which we always do, is check for referrals, case studies, testimonials. But I strongly suggest speaking with maybe 2 of their clients rather than just relying on case studies and testimonials, which is very important, but still it's kind of how they want to represent themselves that gets demonstrated when we talk about case studies, right? I'm not saying they are kind of not truthful to what they put forward in case studies, but at times it's the marketing world we live in, right? So speaking to a couple of references might be really helpful as well. I hope that helps. So next one is from Joanna. How do you go about when clients ask you if your work is done internal or if you're outsourcing the work? And then how do you explain your fees? A very interesting one. Thanks for bringing that up. Again, different agencies tackle this differently, and I would love to get 2 cents from Moby on this as well. But my interaction with agencies, different agencies has different scenarios. I was in New York at lunch with an agency, and very surprisingly, I heard, and it's not that small boutique agency where their prices and rates are very competitive. Like they are kind of a top end agency. They mentioned they in last quarter Q1 2024 they happened to lose close to 3 million worth of deal cumulatively, right? Just because the competitor was pitching to the brand stating that our prices are competitive and not standard agency rate. It's better than other agency rates. And why? Because they leverage offshore partners, and they were giving an assurance to the brand, you don't need to worry about it, we're going to be there as an owner to ensure that we deliver what we commit. But because why our prices are competitive, because we leverage offshore partner, and they were very open about it. And the only reason I was having a lunch with that CEO of an agency, because now he's kind of in his head is really keen to explore offshore options rather than losing the pitches against other competitors who are leveraging offshore partner and very competitive with their price in today's time where every client needs more for less. Moby, would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so quickly here, I think the key thing is, firstly, you should never lie about this stuff, or because you could get caught out. I don't think you should ever hide it. And clients appreciate transparency. So what we've said in the past is like, look, we're very transparent about this, especially in our space. We're like, look, all the strategy is done in-house, all the strategy, all the creative, because you have to think about their fears. What's their fears? One of their fears is that it's the work is going to be not aligned. It's going to miss the mark. So like all the strategy, all the creative, all the thinking actually happens here. But there's things like, and when you're speaking to clients, they understand this because they're going through the same pressures as well. So, for example, we have a head of development, but he has a team offshore because for him he's going to focus on the UX and the strategy of what we're trying to achieve. But for him to copy 100 lines of codes and copy and paste them, that's not worth his time. Or if we're doing blogs or content or articles for you, we'll do that. But we're not going to pay someone, $50, $100 an hour to upload that into WordPress. So, dear Mr. or Miss Client, we do that to be able to, any sort of tasks that are admin or time consuming, we leverage our team. Everything else we do here. The key thing you have to worry about, and we realized this when we started getting bigger and bigger and getting bigger clients, especially like we've got clients in government and health. They're very, very stringent with their security protocols. So we've got endpoint security, we've got active monitoring, we pay for every single laptop that we monitor. When you actually, this kind of answers the question before, when you're approaching a partner, it's very important you understand their processes and security protocols as well, because you're going to have to disclose that with certain clients. And also you don't want to get hacked. So what are their fears? Their fears are the content's going to miss the mark, and the fears are like security, hacking, whatever. So as long as you address those and transparent, you're fine.
Yeah, no, true. So like the other aspects is, as Moby you mentioned, not to hide, like that white label setup helps really well. It's not that you want to still hide the fact, but white label setup brings that seamless experience for clients because they don't see a difference, right? Especially after COVID, everyone in open to remote. So a remote talent communicating as per the agency brand, even sitting in an offshore partner environment, is can be work very seamlessly. They're part of your project management system. They communicate with the clients. They communicate with your team, and very well covered the security aspects because we work. Large set of our business comes from marketing automation, maybe as you know, right? And that's very sensitive because the brands would be sharing their Salesforce CRM access when we are setting up journeys for their marketing automation, when we are setting up email automations for them. So we have clients around that, and we take care of it with right ISO certification. We also have GDPR in place. So like in India, like a lot of clients don't expect us to have it, right? But we do have those protocols in place. So it also depends on the type of partners you work with. I'm sure you can address those fears very well. We work with an IT security company in US who has a 17 people working at Mavelers from last 4.5 years. And they ensure every talent we deploy, we need to procure and purchase a new iMac for them. And it's such a stringent policy. Whenever one of our talent leaves, that MacBook comes back to our office, gets cleaned up, stays there for minimum 3 months before even we allocate that to someone else. So whenever we have a replacement, we need to buy a new device, give it to that person. The existing device comes back, goes through the cleaning process, right? Just for the security aspects. So yeah, there are ways around that, and there are solutions around that. It's just that what are your needs and how your partner is ready to address those needs. Perfect. Any other questions, guys? I know we are a little over time, but it's been kind of fun interacting and fun chatting over some interesting questions and some good
RG has
chats
just called
coming
you.
through.
RG just called you out for not having New Zealand on your wall, so you might have to fix that.
Yeah, very true, RG. Like that's
What's
a
going on?
subconscious thing, right? Like that's always like Australia and New Zealand being seen as one team, one identity, right? So, but no, I hear you. I apologize, and definitely something will address that. Yeah, it's kind of something, the fix I need to make, right? So you see the rest of the world, and these are moving parts. So I kind of, that New Zealand part got broken, and I need to get someone to come and fix that. But good that you notice, RG. Perfect. Great. So guys, amazing. Thanks all for attending, guys. We really appreciate. We really look forward to have very honest feedback from you. So you guys gonna receive, apart from slides and recording, you guys gonna receive an email from us, and we would love to hear from you. What is the next topic you would like us to come up with? So we're really excited and look forward to have more sessions like this. And any suggestions around the next topics we want to address would be great coming from you guys. So please participate, respond, give feedback, give candid, constructive feedback for us to improve upon. We can get better at what we do, and hopefully we can collaborate and exchange ideas and build more knowledge base for our Australian and New Zealand agencies over this platform. Moby, really appreciate you sparing your time again after doing it once in the US time zone and now dedicatedly for our Australian mates and colleagues. Really great, and thanks for joining us today. And thanks everyone in the audience for staying by. Appreciate you guys spending more than what you have committed to be part of this journey.
Thanks,
Hope
everyone.
this has been helpful. Look forward to catching up again. Thanks. Bye for now, guys.